Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 220 of the NCDWI Guy podcast. I have an extremely energetic, entertaining, special guest on the podcast today. Lex-Jordan Ibegbu joins us. Jordan has got an amazing practice, criminal defense, business law, entertainment law, personal injury, and I am so excited to have him on the podcast, sharing his journey into law, sharing how he has grown his business. Jordan is a connector. He is somebody that really thrives in building relationships and building his business through relationships, which I think is really a powerful thing that Jordan shares on the podcast today. Last year, in Charlotte at the North Carolina Advocates for Justice convention, Jordan came up after I had given the DWI update at last year's convention, introduced himself, had such an energy about him, such a genuineness about him that he was one of those people I was like, man, I have got to reconnect with this guy after the conference, get him on the podcast. And I lost Jordan's card that he gave me at last year's convention. And I was literally like searching online, trying to find Jordan. I could not find him, couldn't find his contact information. I had totally blanked on his name at the convention. I'm terrible with names. And so I had lost his card. I could not find him. I was like searching through a lawyer directory. And finally, a year later at this year's convention, we had the opportunity to reconnect. And as soon as I saw Jordan at the talk this year, I was just pumped because I could not believe that we had taken so long to rekindle the connection since my idiotic mistake of losing the card at last year's convention. So just super excited that we got to rekindle the relationship here at this year's convention, and then that we now have the opportunity to share this awesome conversation with Jordan with you all. Hope you enjoy it. Well, Lex, I am super pumped. I just shared with you that I had been trying to find you after the NCAJ convention in Charlotte 2023. You came up, introduced yourself. You just have this great aura about you. You're so full of energy. And it was like super disappointing because as soon as I left the convention, I've written down like a list of different people I wanted to reach out to. I could not find your name. I went online. I was like searching through lawyers in the Raleigh area, trying to find where is Lex? Where can I get this guy? And I was unsuccessful. So then 1 year fast forward, we're in Wilmington, and here it comes. I was like, "That's him. That's my man." So I was super pumped that we both made it to convention this year, because that was just great reconnecting with you. So again, very much appreciate the conversation that we had down there, and looking forward to today.
Definitely, man. Hey, man, you're a legend. I mentioned that earlier. I knew it was gonna come back around. It always comes back around for the hustler. So I'm always happy to be here, man. I'm so happy to be here. You don't know how much, game and knowledge I got from you starting my practice and getting things running.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And I think it's always, I feel like we've all been in that same boat of getting the, law practice geared up. And the more that we can kind of learn from each other's successes, which are for me primarily my mistakes, like you trial and error and fail and try again, the more we can do that as a group, the better off we are.
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, I think, kind of a good place for us to start, and this is kind of where I like to go with kind of these interviews, is just to get a little bit of background. So kind of tell us why you decided to go to law school, and then kind of what led down this road towards criminal defense.
So I decided to go to law school because I'm always like I've always been very analytical. I'm always looking for tomorrow. I've always been a dreamer. So I'm like, being in America, being a first generation, my father's from Nigeria.
Okay.
You always look at like, how can I get there? I know it's attainable. It's a lot of opportunity here, even if it's wrapped up in, a whole bunch of mess, right? So I was like, am I going to be a scientist or am I going to be an attorney and a politician? So remember I was sitting in 10th grade. I went to Carey Academy for high school. And I was like, if I take AP chemistry, I'm going to go on the road to be like a doctor. Or if I take AP history, I'm going to go on the road to be a lawyer and then use that as a jumping stone to maybe get in politics or maybe do policy work or something of that nature. So I was like, I like chemistry a lot, but that biology was not my jam. Know that, I always made music, I always rapped, I always like being in court, holding court. My grandmother was calling me a Philadelphia lawyer when I was like 1 year old because I used to just babble all the time. So they used to start dressing me up in suits. I was
That's
a
awesome.
baby. Yeah, straight up. They used to dress me up in suits. So I was always walking around in suits. I was in high school wearing suits, so I thought I
So
was
you've
20
been rocking the sweet clothes since
old
long
for a while.
before
Yeah,
me.
for a while, I've been rocking the, fake Italian suits, $100 suits, making them look like $1,000 suits, getting them tailored. Kids are like,
That's
who is this
awesome.
kid? So that's why I wanted to go to law school. I saw that that fit my skill set. When I got to law school, I thought that actually what makes the most sense to me is probably like business transactions, like business associations, secure transactions. I do a bit of that work. But I clerked for this federal judge, and he was like, I know you're doing this lobbying and all this stuff, other stuff, but you a litigator, son.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we had to give a case on like it was federal court, and we had to give like a mock trial. He called everybody in there. We had a
Oh,
jury,
that's great.
and I was like making analogies to like Rich and Alpo in there, and everybody they was like I was making analogies to like Rayful Edmond because I came God, I got older siblings that's like 10 and 15 years older than me. So they were like, who is this kid? And I'm wearing 80s bifocal goggles trying to look like I was like a 1987 drug dealer from Paid in Full. And I was like,
Oh man,
they're
that's
not
awesome.
real the character.
Yeah,
But
I mean that really is like one of the great benefits, and we're gonna get a little bit into like kind of the business background that you also, have brought into your practice. But I think it's really cool when you're looking at like what practice areas exist out there to kind of think, how can I get in the courtroom? Because I do think a lot of us go into law school thinking, oh, we're going to be arguing,
mhm,
cases in front of a judge. And for most lawyers, that doesn't happen like maybe
mhm.
ever, but like certainly not frequently. In the criminal defense space, it's like every day we get to go in there and, be in front of judges, and it's a blast doing that.
Pull the knives out real fast. I'm like, but in all honesty, I was down at University of Miami for law school, and like people look down on criminal defense because part of it's anti-black,
Interesting.
and part of it is classism. So me, I grew up in downtown Raleigh. I have like siblings, cousins that were involved in the criminal justice system. So I grew up going to federal prisons and visiting prisons in Virginia. So it actually still to this day, and even back then, it would give me like anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
That,
was I was like, nah, I'm not rocking with that. I feel like I'm unsafe in the streets if I'm doing criminal defense.
yeah.
I got tapped to be a prosecutor at one point, but then I went up in there and I told like one of the ADA's underlings like I'm not prosecuting anybody for misdemeanor weed, and they were
Yeah.
like, okay, we can hire you. So so so
I
but
have
like
run into a couple of prosecutors that really do take that approach currently, which I think is very cool. Like I just think it's good to see when somebody has kind of the personal ethic to basically be like, look, there are certain things or whether it's certain crimes or certain situations where it's like, this does not deserve to be prosecuted. I think that's a really hard line for a lot of younger prosecutors to figure out, like, where does, kind of the office's discretion kind of meet my discretion? Like where is the balance here? And I do think that you have to at least have some level of like, there are certain things I'm just not going to prosecute, whether that's on a, very much like an individual basis. Like looking at each case and saying, this is just not worth us pursuing. So I love that.
Some of the, bigger counties, they don't give that discretion.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Yeah.
people just get in there and they're just like,
Yeah. It's hard.
I got to push hard, and then they don't have the life experience to know what they're pushing for and what they
Right.
how to affect somebody. So back to the story. I didn't really want to do criminal defense, but coming out of law school, I was arrogant. I was like, man, I'm about to be at an international law firm. I'm about to be doing lobbying. I'm
Because
about to do
that
whatever.
Miami does a lot of that, right? That I think when I was in law school, second year, we did an international law moot court competition. I think it's called the Jessup competition in at the Miami School of Law. And so what a campus. I mean, it's definitely a pretty place to go to law school for sure.
Definitely. So like I didn't pass the bar the first time, Florida bar. So then the offer that I had got rescinded. So now I got finally
Was that
passed.
going to be in Miami?
Mhm.
Okay.
Then when I finally passed the Florida bar, I'm driving down to Miami every week for a year and a half from
Oh
Raleigh
man. Oh geez.
and like doing interviews, and they're like, we're not rocking with you. Get down there. I'm sleeping on park benches in my like very nicely fake Italian set suit.
Oh my
Oh, they're like, oh, we already hired somebody. I'm like, yo, we gonna do this interview. I just drove 12 and a half hours. We doing it right.
God.
And, so I was like, man, I gotta go take the North Carolina bar. It's a different market.
Yeah.
They're not marketing with me. So I took North Carolina bar. After some, doing some little dot review stuff here and there. Finally, I like finessed my way up into working at DOJ. Thing was, I'm doing workers' comp. I had no idea what workers' comp was. So
Mm.
then doing some contract work. So got up out of there after a little bit. Then I went to a boutique law firm, one of the bigger criminal defense firms here in the Wake County area. They used to have offices all around the state. And like a lot of people, they didn't know how to use me. But the guy figured me out how to use me quick. And he was like, oh, you you like that. I like you. So like, like my first DUI, I went up in there and I'm like, I had this like kid, he's like from Mexico. He doesn't speak any English. And I said, oh, how you gonna have probable cause to arrest if you're unsure if he can do the SFSTs because he can't understand what you're saying, and then you got somebody off the side of the road to translate, but you don't know what he's saying.
Yeah.
So that doesn't amount to the totality of the circumstances. But the thing is, I'm in there at like 27 years old, throwing books down, like, Your Honor.
That's awesome. You got to bring the drama.
And the judge was like, You sure you want to hire this man as your attorney? What are you doing?
That is hilarious.
But like the judge was pissed because I kept him in there to like 6. But my boss was like, Oh, you're gonna be our DUI guy. You're
Yeah,
gonna
no, I think that's
got
huge. Yeah, I
you
mean,
got
you can tell when somebody is passionate about something, and whether it's about, again, like the charge, or more, maybe more in your case, like just being in the courtroom and like having that, man, it's amazing space. Being in the courtroom for a trial is just such a, you know, it's wildly different than like any other thing in life. It's just such a space in and of itself. So I think that, when you see that with somebody, you can recognize it pretty early. You're like, that person likes doing trials, regardless of like, past qualifications, trial experience. It's like, this person wants to be in front of a judge arguing. It's such a cool thing to see.
Definitely. So that I started there and being from Raleigh, I thought it was gonna be scary. But like the community just like embraced it. Like people be like, oh, people call him the law firm that I worked at like Lex-Jordan. Lex-Jordan got so bad, like the like one of the boss's business guy was like, stop telling people to call you, tell them to call the firm. I was like,
That's
because my mama and sister so proud of me. They're like,
yeah.
oh, call my baby at this firm, call this
Yeah.
number.
Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
I mean, it is. I think that is a real interesting, like, dynamic, at any firm where there's more than one attorney, because you really do earn like such a personal connection with people. We had for a long time, a close friend of mine, Henry Padilla, that worked at the office. who was not a lawyer. He was, basically just one of our interpreters, but he had like so earned the trust of the Hispanic community. He was very clear to be like, I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice. But people would walk in the office and be like, I want to talk to Henry. And Henry would be like, well, we've got to get like a lawyer in here. But it's just like you earn that reputation with people based on that individual interaction, that they're looking for the person that they can trust. And he spoke the language, he knew the culture, he's from Bolivia. It's like, this is the person that we trust to take care of our interests. He can tell whoever else needs to know, but like, this is the person that we need to like communicate our interests to. So at the lawyer level, it's almost like, that much more. It's like, well, I'm not hiring a firm, I'm hiring, Bobby or Jan or whoever it is. Like, I'm hiring this person. Like, that's what I came here to do. So that's awesome.
So, that's why I kind of fell in love with criminal defense. Got the fear out of it, really love touching the community. I'd be in court just laughing with people that I then might have known my sister or known my mother or know my grandmother. I'm just like, and the judge is like, you need to quiet it down. So I'm like tickled about something every day. It's something new and fun, but I would go to war with the prosecutors because they're not understanding that like when I leave this, I can't go to some of these prosecutors, they're living in Johnson County, they're living
Yep.
in, Durham, they're living out of county. When I go home, I had one guy who he got charged with 7 felonies, all marijuana. And I worked out a great deal for him. Got it dropped down to 1 felony, probation. He was upset.
Yeah. No,
Called my brother and my mother was like, Jordan didn't do it. Jordan didn't give me what I wanted because he got a felony. But from an attorney perspective, that's amazing. But for him, because he
yeah.
knew me,
Yeah.
closeness was there, it was a problem. So I had to push a little bit harder, and I might be bothering you, but it's because I see these people. These are people that I'm growing up with my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I their humanity in a different way, and I know that the effect that it's gonna have. You know, now personally, I don't do like I don't on the criminal defense. I don't do really above like H and I's, just because you know for that closeness, you once you get above that you kind of you playing in a different world.
You are
Um,
playing in a different world. Yeah, we don't do a lot of higher end felonies either. And I mean, part of that is just, the district court and superior court are operating in such different like time setups, and kind of the wheeling and dealing that goes on in both of those places is drastically different, county by county. So we're kind of similar in that we kind of focus more on the district court level stuff, and then low end felonies. Just it's a
yeah.
different beast working in those high end felony cases.
With those type of felonies, you're really changing somebody's life.
Yes. Yeah.
You got a frat kid who got a coke charge, and I went to Carolina, so I mean I saw it all. You got a
Yeah.
frat kid coke charge, or you got somebody who got a DUI who's about to lose their nursing license. You're
Yeah.
changing the trajectory of their life with. When you get in that world, and I seen that world deeply. Some of those people, some of them good people, but some of it, things can get a little murky.
Sure.
If you're like me, where you're in the community and people can touch you. If you're not, people can't touch you, then fine. But for me,
Yeah, that's definitely a different level. I mean, and I think that again, there's a real blessing in that kind of like almost self-made network that you have, because it's again like everybody knows you by name and is, looking for you individually to represent them in their case. Or, if you can, it's like, well, then who do you recommend? Because you're the only person that I trust to kind of give me the right direction here. But yeah, when you have people that you're close to, and there's like a expectation level set, that becomes a difficult thing to deliver. And it's also hard
yeah,
to see from an outsider's perspective. You have clients that will be part of a, multi co-defendant case. One person is getting a deferred prosecution, and the other person, the state is like hammering for the same charge. And they're like, well, what's my lawyer doing wrong? It's like, well, no, it's you've got like 6 prior like offenses, and this person over here doesn't have anything. Like, I mean, it's not that this is not apples to apples going on. So
Mhm.
it's hard when you're in that like outsider perspective, and it's like, what is this decision being based off of?
100%. 100%.
So
So,
in terms of, as you've been like building your brand, obviously very well, kind of what have been some of like the biggest hurdles that you've come across, and I guess kind of going from the firm you were working at and kind of starting with DUI cases, what led to you kind of deciding to open up your own practice?
well, I always knew I was always entrepreneurial. I was the kid that was like, in order to take the LSAT, I was like, I'm gonna sell my CDs. I'm gonna do rap shows. So I was rapping in college. I take
That's awesome.
money about my books, or like I was always like that, like trying to flip some money, trying to figure out how to, get to the next step. But I was
That's
long.
powerful. It really is. It's powerful.
So when I'm at a place, like again, it takes a specific type of person to know how to use me or use people that's like me. I'm the I'm the guy that's like asking stupid questions because I'm trying to understand the inner workings. So it was a blessing to be at the firm that I was at because I got to watch and observe. So my the founding partner was like an actor.
Mm.
He would say, you need to talk. He would train me on how to talk to clients to pull them in to, get them to retain you.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there like, oh, this is how you do it. This is psychology. Oh, okay. How were you marketing? How did you build this? What you do to get different offices? What is the missteps that you did? So I'm asking all these questions, and I would do that at other jobs, and that would become problematic. Like as of recently, I had a big firm that was, saw me and they were like, we see you getting these settlements. What you want? So I started asking the guy questions, and he said, you don't ask me the questions here. I ask you the questions. At that point, the conversation was over.
That's yeah, that's such a terrible that is a firm that you do not want to be a part of the culture. If there is not a culture of like shared learning, to me, then it's a space where you are basically gonna have a rough go. Like that to me, that's like very important to it doesn't matter like what kind of practice area, kind of who is involved at your firm. Like there's gotta be that shared curiosity, that shared knowledge. One of our core values at the firm is student mindset, and that applies to everybody. People, answering the phones, case managers that have been here for 5 years, attorneys that have been here for a decade. It's like you better keep learning and do it with each other. Bounce quite like we want people to be asking questions of each other. So yeah, that to me would be a humongous red flag of like this is not the right culture to be a part of.
Definitely. We weren't even in an interview. He was just bouncing ideas. I said, oh, just give me some fries. My wife pregnant. I'm just taking some fries. You can buy them. And I got up out of there. So,
Yeah. Well,
so
I love that acting background. I recently spoke with Rob. I'm gonna butcher his last name. I think he pronounces it Dimencio.
mhm.
But he's kind of in like the Durham, Chatham area, and he has like a background in acting. And as we were talking through that, and then like talking about this attorney mentor on your end, there is such like a role of kind of uh, we have a part to play, whether it's in that like attorney client office, whether it's in the office space, whether it's in the courtroom, and clients are really paying attention to kind of what are you doing in a consultation, what are you doing in an interview to go over discovery. Do you seem distracted? Do you seem like you don't care what's going on? Or are you 100% are you looking at your phone all the time, checking email? Like, even if they're like kind of otherwise engaged in something else, like watching part of a video, are you there present with them or are you not? And it's to me, like, that's a humongous thing that's getting missed. I think most of us that do enough like trial work kind of have a sense about that in the courtroom. But I love the fact that you just talked about it in the office space, because in the office space, that is just as important. Because just like kids, clients are paying attention to everything that you do. They are watching every move that you make, judging, for good or for bad, whether or not you're kind of the right fit, somebody that can be trusted to handle their case. And if you're 100% engaged and you're, calling clients back, you are, when they come into the office, treating them with respect and really being present in their misery, that goes a long way in terms of whatever advice you're giving them about how to handle the case. That's huge. So I love that that was like part of the training process.
Definitely. So what happened was, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to either stay at that firm or, if the money was right, or go to another firm and learn some more. But the pandemic hit and they furloughed because it was a courthouse practice. When they furloughed, I was in my 20s. I just bought my first house and I was like, I'm not losing this house. So went out and started getting it because at the time I was already asking them for a raise because I was bringing in my salary on my own individual clients in addition to what I was working on for them. So I was like, hey, this is the math, not math, and I'm appreciative, but pay me a little bit what I'm worth. So I started out there just guerrilla marketing, use those lessons that I learned and the lessons that I just knew from making music all my life, um, you know, and get my name out there that way and apply that to starting my own practice. So it was kind of by force, but it was always something that I wanted to do.
You seem like just somebody that has this incredible, like charismatic ability to make connections. And obviously you kind of already talked about a little bit the network that you had built up. So that was probably a huge first step in like the success of your firm was just, having, some sort of like kind of preset network. What did that like just specifically, if there's anything that kind of stands out to you, what specifically was kind of some of those guerrilla tactics that you kind of implemented in those first couple of years after launching the firm?
I mean, I'm still in the first couple of years to be
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
honest.
that's true. You said COVID. That's right. So,
But for me, I can't spend what everybody else is spending to get to the top of Google.
right.
But I've run, like I can't tell all the secrets on the Google ads, SEOs, but my name will come up, you'll see my picture. I abide by this principle in relationships as well as business.
Yes. Yeah.
Who's gonna rock with you is supposed to rock with you. Everybody's not gonna like you. You can't contort yourself in a manner such that you're trying to get the broad majority to identify or like you because they will never see your value. But when you are authentic and when you do good work, a certain sect of the population is going to identify with that and they're going to gravitate to you. And that's all you need.
Yeah,
So,
that's so true. That's powerful. I think in the courtroom, you would be somebody just based on like, again, just a very few interactions with you that would stand out in a crowd of people because of the fact that you just have this like charismatic nature to you. You just got this amazing smile and very kind of like animated. And I think you have to stand out in spaces. Like you have to be different than everybody else is being, whether that's because you're way more prepared than anybody else in the courtroom, whether that's because of like your dress, your persona, the way that you clearly have relationships with everybody else in the courtroom. Again, people sitting in the gallery, just like the client in the office is watching everything, right? Like, who is it among these 20 lawyers sitting up here that I want to like try to like flag down as they're leaving the courtroom? There's reasons that there are certain people getting routinely flagged down. But the other thing that I love about that, and then I'm sorry to have derailed you, but I love the like let your personality shine, because I think so often we kind of get in this, I've got to fit the mold. I've got to be like this certain thing or persona in the courtroom. And so we've really tried like at our office, we have, for instance, my partner Lance, who's in the Charlotte office, we have very different litigation styles. He's a former police officer and he will get in people's faces. He is aggressive. He will like, uh, push on issues, and I'm much more of like a kind of philosopher. Like, let's just ask some questions. Let me kind of just pull this information out. Let's educate the court. Like, it's a very different style, but they both work. And so if just try to like make yourself something that you're not, that's not going to come through. If you don't share what's important to you with clients, if you don't share that on your website with people that you talk to, you're just vanilla, just bland. And, there's no reason to be referred to. There's no reason for anybody to kind of like want to share that experience with another person that they care about, that they want to get taken care of. So I love that. I love bringing your individuality to the courtroom and to your office.
Definitely, because at one time and when I was younger, I was trying to I became a shadow of myself, due to not having confidence and being scared.
Mm-hmm.
Professional is just not professional, although I do think it's a time and place for everything. When you are operating in that manner, it can take your light away. So, in the past, opening my practice, I say, okay, I gotta let that light shine. I gotta move forward and, do good work. So that's just what I strive to do, is to do good work. And it comes back in abundance.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that clearly, we spend a lot of time, thinking about, how do we build the brand, and really, and at the law firm level, especially for us that are smaller firms, like your brand is kind of everything. And so your brand has to be unique. There's got to be something individual about it. So I love that idea of just bringing out, kind of the true persona. Again, everybody's different in that regard, and I think we all just kind of get like nervous about standing out. We don't want to like get called out in the courtroom for something, so we're all trying to like kind of be the very square, in the mold. It's all very, again, like vanilla. And there's certain things that you have to do. You want to dress the judge, your honor, that type of thing, but there's a lot of creativity that I think gets lost in the courtroom, because it's not just pure science. We talk back and forth a lot about the art and the science of trying cases, and there's a ton of art that goes into trying cases well.
I agree. It's theater, it's a show. You got to
Yeah,
get there, you got to sell it, you got to make people empathetic, you got to bring people to your side and make them see your side of the story, even though it's obviously skewed towards the prosecution, and just see that your client is a good person, and that's a lot of times what will bring a judge or a jury, to understand it and see what you're saying.
100%. Yeah, in terms of, kind of that individual brand that you've been describing, what is kind of like, if you kind of had to like bottle it into kind of what is the unique selling proposition of your firm, what does that kind of, are there certain characteristics or things that you are kind of known for, or that clients are attracted to? Because I think it's just helpful to have, some sort of a example of that for people that are kind of trying to find themselves, so to speak, in building their brand in the early stage of practice. What does that kind of look like for your particular law firm?
For me, is one main thing, you got to see these people's humanity,
Mm-hmm.
especially in defense. A lot of times, even the criminal defense lawyers, they resent the clients because
Yeah.
they come from a different world. They don't understand it. They don't even want to do criminal defense. I think doing criminal defense is a privilege. A lot of attorneys look at doing criminal defense as a burden. Oh, why am I even here? You'll hear that in the Wake County courthouse. No, I
Yeah.
see the value and the humanity of these clients, and I'm trying to get their life on the track in the best way that I can. So when they feel that you see that humanity, even if, I have clients believe in me more than I believe in myself. My first case coming out of law school, I didn't have, get a job. Wasn't able to get a job yet. It was somebody that knew of my family that called me. They had assault with a deadly weapon, infliction of serious injury, and it could have been bumped up to attempted murder.
Mm.
I wasn't qualified to do it. I actually had to call another attorney in to kind of help me when we was doing a hearing. We ended up getting dropped down to a misdemeanor.
Wow, that is wild.
That's my first case. I didn't understand anything about procedure and anything like that, but they believed in me more than I believed in myself because I saw their humanity and I pay attention to details. So when I'm getting up in there, even though the judge is probably doing like this here, annoyed. So you got to balance the threat. You got to do a balancing test for me. I have to do a balancing test. I don't want to get the judge so annoyed that he's automatically or she's automatically going to rule against me. But I kind of weave certain particulars of the client's story in whatever I'm saying so they can feel like I'm listening to them. In real time, I got a DUI off because the guy say, I came from the gym. My leg was hurting, and I told him that. I say, Your Honor. Then I asked the officer, he agreed. I said, oh, he came from the gym. And he was so appreciative that I said that because I was listening to him in real time.
Right,
Helped me out.
right.
Use that to say, if you got a leg injury, compared to NHTSA guidelines, that skews the results of the SFSTs. But you got to be able to listen and not push these people up because you think you're better than them. And
Yeah,
then on top of that, communication is of the utmost importance. I'm gonna call you. I stay on the phone. My phone always ringing. You're gonna get a phone call from me. We're gonna let you know discovery came in. We got a court date coming up. What we doing? We're gonna talk through it. Every DUI, I'm sitting on the phone. Even if I don't ink the client, we sitting on the phone for 30 minutes. I'm just talking through it. I'm explaining to them what Ferguson hearing is, probable cause. I'm asking them because some people just say, you got a DUI. What did you blow? This is the price.
yep.
We're gonna run through the whole story, and I'm gonna walk you through how I would attack it. And when they hear that, they're like, oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna go with somebody else or somebody that told me or somebody that's older, maybe even been doing it as long as I've been living. But then I'm gonna go with you because you took that time because you paying attention to detail, you know.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, I
and
think that's so healthy, even just from like an avoidance of burnout perspective, because I've talked about this several times on the podcast. So for many, this is not going to be like a new story, but there's been a couple of uh, counties, locally where there's like an attorney room, and you walk in and it's literally just like a bitch session. I don't really know how else to like describe it, about like, of my throwing my client under the bus, and my clients are pieces of crap. And, just it's back and forth about like who's got the worst clients. And like, I hate being in those rooms because it's just such negative garbage to me. Like the people that I've talked to that seem to have the most joy about practicing are the ones that are just really love helping their clients, like really appreciate their clients. And there's no perfect human being. Like, yeah, I mean, we could complain about ourselves, we could complain about our spouses. I mean, there's nobody that's out there that's perfect. But I think that having, eliminating from your office, whether you are an office of one, an office of three, an office of 10, whatever it might be, eliminating like a culture of complaining about your clients is humongous in terms of having like a burnout avoidance factor. Like it just is huge.
you can't be complaining first and foremost as a man. Complaining don't get you nowhere.
Yep.
Secondly, you gotta if you have in your practice, you have to wake up with a positive mentality because life and death is held within the power of the tongue. So you have to be
100%. I totally agree with that.
think about your client. You're not gonna get no money out here because you're gonna subconsciously don't want to deal with the client.
So true.
I'm telling you the truth.
It's true. Yeah,
It's the
100%.
job. You calling me, you giving me half of your mortgage for the month. So it's a privilege for me to do it because you could go with somebody that's been doing it 30, that's paying thousands of dollars for going Google every month. That's how I look at it. So I don't
100%.
there's a such thing as burnout. I have my limits. You're not about to call me at 8 p.m. Don't call me at 8. I'm not picking up the phone. You can't call me on the weekend, but I'm never going to be on the phone with you as long as we're not, being disrespectful. I'm never going to be as a phone with you and be resentful because
Yeah, I
I know
love
what
that.
it means to I know what it means to wish that I could be a lawyer when I didn't pass the bar. I know what it means to wish that I could graduate from high school, that I could graduate from college. I know what it means to have people looking at me, wishing that proud of me that I'm even doing what I'm doing, and wishing that they could be where I'm at. And these people who can't. on paper do anything for me, paying my bills because they sitting there referring me clients. They just so happy to see me. So, eh, that's just how I look at it.
No, I totally agree. I have a good friend, Jody Lanier, who always talks about kind of working outside in the kind of like, heat of the summer. And so anytime that you would ask him, or frequently when you'd ask him, like, how's your day? He's like, I'm living the dream. Like, I'm in here in the air conditioning, I'm doing my gig over here. I'm get a couple of traffic tickets. I get to go talk to my friends, and then like basically head out. I'm gone from the office today at 3 o'clock because I don't have anything else. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much the dream. Like that's about as good as it
Have
gets,
in
right?
perspective. Like for real, you got to put it in perspective,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know. And I'm really big on perspective. I'm really big on perspective. I thank the Lord every day. I prayed every day to get in law school. I prayed every day to pass the bar. I prayed every day to get a job, to get my practice rolling so I could take care of my baby and my wife and be growing. Pray every day for God to cover me. I throw away money because I don't want to do stuff that's unethical. Or if I feel like I might not be ready for it. So when I hear that all the time, and I'm just like, okay, all right, I hear you. Because
yeah. I love that.
the attorneys that's most successful that I see in Wake County that drive around in Maseratis and these are criminal defense attorneys. There's a couple of them. Some of them they not eating, some of them are eating very well. I never hear them complaining.
Yeah.
They just running around like a chicken with the head cut off, just running. They happy to run though.
Yeah, that's
I'm telling you, they happy to run.
right. Yeah, I think that's so wonderful. And I don't know, if the kind of faith component that you shared, is that something that is kind of part of the identity with clients that in any way is known? Because I do there have been times in the office, and it's always hard, like you're not necessarily trying to like dive into somebody's religion, but that has been, like, I would say, a brand building point that has been really powerful in terms of like having shared faith component with clients, in terms of just having a good open dialogue where it's kind of like, okay, again, this person has my best interest at heart. Even for people that aren't believers, it's kind of like, if this person is approaching with this set of principles, I can kind of trust that they are trying to kind of do its best for me. I don't know if there's anything kind of specific on that front, but I do think like sharing openly on that side of things is definitely somewhat unique and kind of cool to be able to do. So
Definitely. I mean, faith is paramount. I try not to, be judgmental and Bible toting in that regard, but when you're coming from a community or you can speak to the community in language that they understand, what's understood doesn't have to be explained.
right,
So,
exactly. Yeah, that's so
phrase
good.
and terminology can be used and that they will understand where you're going.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, well, I guess in terms of switching gears a little bit into kind of some substantive areas, one of the things that I think would be kind of interesting to talk about a little bit is this kind of idea of attacking appreciable impairment. And so, in terms of kind of like on a DWI case, where you've got a probable cause hearing, you've got maybe a low blow, and so it's going to go to trial. You're going to have your closing argument. Let's kind of just walk through it, on a borderline case. What are some of the trial strategies that you take in regards to attacking that appreciable impairment standard?
So for me, anything because in Wake County, you'll see a .06 and they get charged with DUI.
Right, right,
So anything from .06 to .09, automatic, we trying it. Even sometimes .10, we trying it. And that's based on, um, what the statute says is that, the result shall be deemed sufficient evidence,
right.
per se, and it's appreciable impairment, right? So, but, obviously we all know that based on our own, sorry if I can't pronounce it, I'm really from Raleigh, I'm a little country at times. Based on our own, it's not a mandatory presumption, it's a prima facie standard. right? So when I go through
That's
trial,
that's a tough thing for a jury to understand. I think sometimes just because of the language, and so I feel like it's really worth spending time on that. You know, judges, I think sometimes there's certain judges that are okay at looking at these, and then certain judges where it's like if it's a point oh 0.08, it's a point oh 0.08. But in front of a jury, I think that trying to figure out what's the difference between per se impairment and like basically, you know, a kind of mandatory finding, like what does this actually translate into? It's really like a lot of education that has to happen on those kind of cases in superior court. So yeah, I love that. And yeah, just yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I love it.
no words. I mean, what I do is a lot of times it's rap, it's analogy, you know. My words cut like a razor, you know. I got to make these analogies. So a lot of times I'll say something in the vein of, you know, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, or if it's a bench trial, because I DUI is bench trial, Your Honor, you know, uh, this isn't this is a presumption. This isn't a conclusion.
Yeah,
You,
that's
you,
that's
and what we're at right now is with the conclusion, the book is closed. But with the presumption, we just turn to the next chapter. But sometimes when you get to the next chapter, the facts that presented in the next chapter can undo what's already been illustrated in the previous pages.
mm,
So when you start breaking it down like that, you know, they begin to understand. So you have to give things to people in layman's terms because I can't use all these multiple syllabic words and expect them to understand. Although I do kind of, you know, go through some of the language from the NHTSA manual. Like, you know, what I like to go is, you know, and sometimes I break it down a little bit simpler. But that clause where it's saying fact find the court or jury may accept the legal presumption. However, other evidence, such as testimony, may overcome that presumption. And I'll be like, Your Honor, that's what we saw today. That's what you heard today. You heard that this other evidence overcame that presumption. And a strategy that I'll use is a lot of times that even if I know that we're not going to beat it on probable cause, especially if it's before a judge, if it's a bench trial, I'm going to run probable cause hearing because I want the judge to get familiar with the facts because the same facts that's in probable cause is the facts that's used to overcome the presumption.
yeah, that's powerful.
So if we're in the probable cause aspect and I'm saying that, hey, we can't really trust the results of this because he had a leg injury and the NHTSA manual says people with leg and back injuries are prone to not be able to do these standardized field sobriety tests if they're only basing, you know, if you got somebody that's on the threshold of 0.07, 0.08, and they're really only basing it on the 0.07 and the SFSTs. And even if they get past probable cause, I still bring the fact that the test in itself is shaky. Well, then that other evidence begins to overcome that presumption, you know? So that's a lot of times what I like to do. I like to go through, you know, what that the language from the statute, what the language from the officer's own training says, and I might get him to, you know, him or her to kind of testify to such. Say this is what you're trained by. You're trained on the NHTSA manual. Okay. What does that say? Speak about the case law and kind of break it down in layman's terms, and then just start piling on the facts. DUIs, if you're trying to overcome the presumption, it's all about the facts. It's all about, you know, what's in those SFSTs. I may get even petty sometimes and be like, you know, with the HGN, hey, the stimulus didn't contrast to the background of what was used because you're supposed to use a stimulus that's contrasting. So if you're an African American officer and you got your finger right here and it's in nighttime, you know, the stimulus is not in a contrasting manner. So you got to go through all of that and be very specific. Some instances, you know, obviously you can go with the margin of error aspect. I think that can be a little that can be sometimes for a jury, for a judge, they may understand it, but especially if you're in district court, the judge may just be like, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not gonna base that on margin of error. I rarely see that get ran through. But you know, I've had instances where, again, this is listening to your client, where I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, do you have any that you're comfortable with sharing with me? Any immunodeficiency diseases, anything that will alter, because it's all ratio,
Right.
point oh eight, um, 0.08 to 210 liters of breath. Oh, sorry, you know even more than I, but you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a ratio. So based on the average person. So to create that doubt, if I may have somebody who has anemia, HIV, anything like that, and I've had that case, but we're bringing it up if they're comfortable testifying to it, and we go through their medical records because a lot of times these clients can't hire experts. They're not paying you enough to hire an expert as well. We get them to testify to such, what the results of their white red blood cell count is. You can challenge it that way as well. So, for me, I just try to, again, I'm really going through the statute, going through the case law that kind of details that it is a presumption and that it can be overcome, because there's plenty of case law out there, whether it's Naron, whether it's Simmons, whether it's State v. Hare, that kind of articulate one and the same thing, that like
Yes.
you can kind of overcome that, or even if they are on the side of the prosecution, it'll be language in there that you can kind of use, you know, and then pile on those facts and that you may have brought up in probable cause and PC, to kind of overcome that. And if you get a judge who will see the facts, I don't need a judge that's pro the defendant. I need a judge that's
Fair.
gonna facts. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that there's a couple of like great, takeaways. I think, whenever you were talking earlier about kind of the, chemistry versus history background, and I was definitely more into the history, like that, the kind of the path to law was definitely an easier path than like anything that would have led down science. But when it comes to DWIs, like if you know the science better than the state, and it is not hard to do. Like you do not have to be good at science. I am not good at science. You don't have to be good at science to know it better than the prosecutor and the police officer. So when it comes to, the science of field sobriety testing, if you spend the time on that, you'll know what the studies say better than the prosecutor knows it better than the officer. When it comes to, something like Henry's Law, that for me, when I started, down the path of really again trying to say what is this breath testament, right? Or breath test. It's an estimate of blood testing. Why is it? Why do we care? Like what is this like, estimate matter about? Well, we talked about this at the DWI update, but the blood test, why we care what the person's blood alcohol concentration is that's how the alcohol gets to somebody's brain. Like that's what causes impairment. Nobody's impaired because they've got alcohol in their mouth. They're impaired because they've got alcohol in their brain space, right? Like that's where, and so the whole purpose of breath testing is to figure out what is the kind of likely amount of alcohol in somebody's blood. And again, certain judges maybe latch onto this, others don't. A jury understands that. A jury says, yes, somebody is impaired when there is, basically a CNS depressant. Again, that's not what they're thinking. When there is alcohol in their brain, that's what they're thinking. When there's, something in the brain, that's when, people are making bad decisions. The decisions come from the brain, not from the mouth. Like this is where there's the problem. So, if we're trying to kind of say, we want an accurate picture of what's going on in the brain, because obviously that's what everybody here cares about. How accurate is this estimate that's being communicated by the breath test? And that's why, to me, like all of those factors that you were just describing in terms of that ratio is so powerful, because I think that it really can be something that gets communicated. The other thing I wanted to point out is the storytelling, I think, is so critical. And you strike me as a particularly like good storyteller. I love that kind of like book analogy when it comes to presumption. When we're talking about a presumption, what does that mean? Whether it's giving a life example or some sort of like a story, parable, whatever you want to do in terms of like being able to communicate that in real life. presumptions, that's not the same thing as proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Like presumptions, assumptions, whatever it might mean, doesn't get us to that level. So I think that that is so powerful to have that kind of storytelling ability when it comes to communicating these principles. I love it.
I mean, you have to, because I mean, nobody's going to be, even the judges, may not be as versed because they may have been attorneys, but they might not have been that might not have been their bread and butter of their practice. So you have to kind of create a understanding of it that's kind of broken down as to how they're gonna be able to analyze it. Because if not, how DUIs are taken and due to the severity of what could be, but not what always is for each client, they're just gonna say per se conclusion, okay,
Yeah.
in their mind,
Yeah.
you know. But you have to educate them like, okay, that's not a conclusion. That's why I bring that up. Like, that's not, the book isn't closed.
Yes.
This is case closed, book closed. Let's go through the pages of this, and we make that analogy to go through the pages, to go through all of those facts, and see how that overcomes the evidence. And a lot of that is, when it's not point of weight, you're looking at appreciable impairment. So then you have to go through pre-arrest, you know, whether this person was appreciably impaired. If the odor of alcohol alone is not enough to find someone, for probable cause, then we know the odor of alcohol alone, if under theory of appreciable impairment, is not enough to convict somebody of a DUI
Yeah.
with proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a lot of times because the officers sometimes they're flying, especially in big cities, they're flying so quick off the hip. It's just like I have clients where they'll stop somebody 2 seconds. You've been drinking? Yeah, I had one PBT.
Yeah.
They do the PBT test first against their training, and then they go through some random SFSTs and maybe do one, maybe two SFSTs, then they arrest them, take them downtown. You know, so you got to kind of use that against them if they're really, kind of absconding on what is the normal procedure. You
Yeah,
know.
100%. Yeah, and I think it is so important to kind of have that mentality of educating the judges, and I think it's easy to do that once maybe, or maybe it's almost natural to do it once. It's hard to do it time after time. And one of my greatest lessons that I ever took away from a judge is I was doing a PC hearing in front of this judge. It's probably like the third or fourth PC hearing in front of this particular judge, and I said, as your honor is well aware, under State versus Sewell, here's kind of some of the facts. And he said, well, if you got a copy of the case, I'd like to look at it. Like, I forget these things all the time. And it reminded me like, hey, I need to not just assume that, again, the judge remembers the last time we had like a similar argument. Every time that I go into the courtroom before a PC hearing, I'm, reading State versus Overocker, State versus Sewell. Like, I'm reading these cases again, even though I've read them, 10 times in the past, 15 times, whatever it might be for any specific case. It's like, that's how you really make sure that your argument is airtight, is by rereading and kind of going through that. The other thing that we forget sometimes is it's like, it might not be the first time that the judge has ever heard this, but it is the first time my client's ever heard this. So even if the judge knows what I'm going to say, there are certain things as part of that like theater that do have to get communicated for the client's benefit. And I think that we really, it's so easy to get into that like monotony of like, I've done this, a thousand times, and, let's just kind of move on to the next point and kind of forget, oh, wait, there's a drama going on here. Like, this is not the thousandth time for the person sitting next to me. This is their first time. And that's something that we almost need like a big sticky note that says like, this is the first time.
You got to attack every, it's like going to, I was a big athlete. I mean, I still am an athlete, playing soccer, running track. You got to deal with, you can't see past any opponent, even if you know you're going to win. So you got to deal with everyone like it's your first and last. And that's how I approach, doing trials and DUIs in particular. So although I may have a skeleton, you know, it's funny you mentioned state v. Rocker. I use it a lot for probable cause because, it's mentioning, we're basing the probable cause on the totality of the circumstances. So, I have to apply, even though I have a skeleton for the hearing, I have to apply the facts of those totality of circumstances and parallel to how this should work with this specific, this case should not be distinguishable from this specific set of facts, right?
Yes.
Um, and then also that for as well for your client, I'll have clients where we'll lose a case, but they'll say, I never had anybody defend me in a manner such that you did. So that brings on more referrals because they see how serious you took it and how much that you were fighting for them in that manner. Now I don't recommend again making a judge stay from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Uh, but the judge should want to take, after having whether it's your trial or whether, if you're in a bench trial or it's a, probable cause motion, he should want to take it under advisement because that means that he or she is thinking about it because I like to give them so much case law that, it, you got to read up on it, what I'm saying, you know. And even if we're in front of the jury, I might not be mentioning a specific case, but, especially with, at trial, I tell them all the time, um, you can find this person guilty. You have the ability to based on this result, but the results don't compel you to do so. You're not compelled to find them guilty, and you would be right if you didn't, you know. So that's something that I really
Yeah.
try to take with me.
Yeah, I think in terms of the kind of perception on the client's end of the fairness, we were just talking about how don't necessarily want like a defense-friendly judge, but a fair judge, a judge that looks at the law, looks at the facts, and then issues rulings sometimes for you, sometimes for the state. There's definitely times that when I've felt like, okay, well, that one was probably not the greatest case, and other times where it's like, man, I just got robbed. And I'm sure the prosecutor's feeling the same way. But I think it's just so important to have that, kind of mentality kind of like built in for the client to also feel that it is a fair hearing. And like you were just saying, when you're presenting that case law, when you're giving something for the judge to kind of read over or feed on, even if they already have their mind made up going into the ruling, it appears to the client that there is like a real question mark as to decision making. And so again, that same judge that I just referenced a few minutes back, you pass a case up and that judge is going to read every word of that case. And from the client's perspective, you can be sitting there sometimes for 15, 20, 25 minutes while the judge reads through the law. But from the client's perspective, it's like, okay, he's thinking about it. This is a good thing. And so again, I think that anything that you can do, again, some judges are not going to do that. They're going to be like, yeah, I know what that case stands for, PC definitely, or, I know what that case stands for. And here's the reasons why I'm not going to find PC. But I think anything you can give the judge that adds that like layer of kind of perceived questioning, perceived, journey of what is the truth, what is the right answer, is really powerful for the client because they're sitting there just kind of thinking like, is this rigged? Is this whole thing rigged? And the more that you kind of like add that, level of required judgment to occur, I think that clients feel that.
Definitely, and it creates a snowball for your practice. You know,
Yes.
you become known as as a specialist to be able to speak on it. You know, I like shoot TikTok vids to kind of gain traction. And then one of the TikTok vids they got the most traction, well, probably got like 6,000 plays. It was like just stating, hey, just because you blew a .08 doesn't mean you're guilty. That's a presumption. That's not a conclusion. But people don't know that. No one's telling them that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
no,
That's so true. Yeah. Well, and I mean, think about what a misperception that is among, if it's a misperception among clients, then it's
Mhm.
definitely a misperception among jurors, right? Like, clients will call in and be like, hey, I blew a .08. I guess I'm toast. Like, and it's like, well, you got to tell me about your situation because that's not the end of the analysis. So I love that. Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, that's, I think again, from a brand building perspective, again, you've got to tap into the marketing that works for your brand. And again, for you, I recently saw one of the videos after we connected on LinkedIn of you talking about the uh kind of paying athletes. And it was such a great video because it's like this is content that people care about, even that for non-athletes, like somebody that just is interested in college sports. It's like, man, that's a really great video, really interesting way to think about like how is some of this like boilerplate language going to get like basically doctored into whatever the athlete is doing to sign up. And so literally you're like signing away your ability to get paid by signing up for this particular school or with this particular contract. Like I could see how that will become very much a part of the game and just something that's cool to kind of think about what are the nuances that are going to come with that. But great sales pitch in terms of like why should you get a lawyer involved if you're going to get on a college, baseball, basketball, football team. I thought that was really powerful. So again, finding the platform where you can brand best from, and in your case, I would say like showcase that personality. For some people, it's video. Some people, it's maybe podcasting or writing content, whatever it might be. Find your voice because I think it really can. Like you gotta be on the medium that it makes sense for what's natural to you.
Definitely, you got to give people, you got to feed them where they can receive it at, you know, and you got to figure out how they can receive it and to speak to them in terms that they're going to want it. You can't feed a sheep steak, and you can't feed a wolf, grass. So you got
Love
to
it.
know what you're dealing with and give it to them in that manner. And when you do, you might think that, hey, what I'm doing is not going to be seen, but everybody has a voice and everybody's voice is appreciated. That's what I've learned through building this practice and through representing people. Everybody's voice is appreciated. And and from a criminal defense standpoint, as an attorney, you're their voice and they just want to be heard. That's what really, helps me get clients over some other firms. They just want to be heard, and I'm giving
Yes.
them the ability to be heard.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, people want to tell their story. They
Yeah,
want to make sure that you know the story so that you can represent them. You're not missing some critical element. So either they want to tell their story. If you're asking lots of questions to pull that story out, you're in a much better position. Well, as we wrap up today, kind of any kind of final like parting advice for lawyers that are in the early building stage of their practice or new lawyers that are fresh out of law school. What kind of parting advice would you give the audience?
I always say, if you know yourself, you have a friend in every room. So you really gotta, be comfortable and confident in yourself, and be humble, you know, in terms of building those relationships. Because you gotta have when building your own practice. I mean, especially when you're building a practice that has multiple practice areas like me. But when building your practice, you gotta be running multiple races at the same time. So on one end, you can't be afraid to touch people. If you're a criminal defense attorney and you don't like the clientele, this isn't for you because you're just going to be tied in on an endless train of contracts and you'll never see the success that you want. I don't do contracts. It's every day is eat what you kill. You got to wake
Yes.
up with blood on your tongue. That's why you have to have that positive mindset. That positive mindset may annoy some people, but every time you see me, we're gonna talk. Hey, I got this practice. Hey, I'm doing this because that has to be first. That has to first come to your mind. You know, and you also, I apply the rules that I learned outside, rules of the streets, to the practice. Always keep your face clean. Do good work. Do a case where it's a 9 over the same way that you would do a case where you're trying a conspiracy case or that you could be in federal court because you never know who that client is going to tell about you.
I love that.
You will never know how your name is going to ring out, and then on the other end, You have to be humble, ask stupid questions, surround yourself with attorneys who are much better than you, much older, so they can
Hmm.
say the mistakes that they made. They can refer you cases that they don't want because that's how your name gets out of there. You're gonna have to deal with some duds, and then so that you can constantly be receiving knowledge and gain. If you move those balls at the same time, you know, getting out there in the community, getting your name out there in the best way that you can. However, whether it's straight, I'm gonna hire a marketing firm, let them do it, or whether it's straight, I'm gonna shake hands, make flyers, go to churches, and then simultaneously like enveloping yourself in the legal community to learn, you'll be successful. It's gonna be 6 months, maybe 6 months to a year uncomfortability. But once you get past that uncomfortability, it'll start growing. And then you
Yeah,
just go, yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was wrapping up. I was just saying, then after that, you just go and get it, and it keeps snowballing. It keeps flowing. Go to heights that you've never seen. Like I do personal injury. I never thought I was going to really do personal injury, but I do personal injury because I do so much criminal defense that they start calling about it.
You get it that they do.
Oh, I can't turn that down. Like, let me figure that out. Let's learn. So,
Yeah, I love that idea of just playing the long game. I mean, I just think that we're so used to this like kind of culture of instant gratification and just that idea that you want to treat every client, no matter what their legal issue is, with like the utmost importance. Make sure that they know like, hey, this is important to me. That's how you build a long-term successful practice, because it is, for the person with the speeding ticket, it's like, this is the most important thing going on right now. Like I need to make sure that this does not impact my insurance, license, ability to get back and forth to this job that I love, provide for my family, whatever it might be. Like this is serious stuff. And so again, everybody can tell when you're like, it's not that big a deal. Like, I don't really care that much. Like everybody can feel that. Like there's that, people have a really good gut check when it's like, does this lawyer care or do they not? So I think that's such a huge, huge approach to have to it. Love it.
you got to care if you want people to care about you. If you want people to give you their hard-earned money or their hard-earned time or believe in you, you got to care. And a lot of times in this country, in America, America lacks community. Sometimes people don't care.
Yep, that's so true.
They're saying hold themselves out to help you. You gotta have empathy. You can't have judgment. It's people coming to you at their worst time in their life. Everything, no matter how minuscule, somebody can have a speeding ticket. They could be a CDL driver. They job on the line. Somebody could get a DUI in there. They don't have legal status. They could be deported. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I mean, I think we just take that for granted so often. I mean, I think
you
we
got
just don't think about the consequences for people. So I
gotta see
agree.
what the consequences are and really, win or lose. Because we it's like playing soccer. You're just gonna leave it all on the field, leave it all on the pitch, regardless. You gotta explain that to your client, but like we're gonna leave it all on the pitch. We're gonna lay it down. Me and the prosecution gonna shake hands. They probably not gonna want to shake hands with me because they may not have grown up playing sports and they don't want to think how I think, but shake hands and the client's gonna see, hey, my lawyer was a real one. He left
That's
that's all on the field for me.
try to avoid the red cards, which the uh,
Um,
the the U.S. could not do recently. So which is not a good past few days from the soccer side of things. So I love soccer as well, but well, it's been a blast, like talking. I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, you poured kind of so much good advice. I mean, this is like just if you're trying to build a practice and you take what Jordan has said to heart and you're doing this in your firm, like this is really going to make a massive difference. So really appreciate the amount of time that you poured into today and yeah, taking the time to share your successes, the failures, the mistakes, the good things that have come from practicing law with the audience. We really are learning a lot when we get this kind of opportunity to talk.
oh man, Mr. Minnick, I'm just appreciative that you saw the value.
It's Jake.
Excuse me, Jake. I just appreciate you saw the value in me. That means the most. A lot of people didn't see the value in me. So I'm always very of the utmost appreciation. And I learned a lot from you when I started my practice and I started getting more DUIs and I was trying to figure out how to get past certain barriers. I watched you quietly and learn. Every case you mentioned, I read it front to back, highlighted everything.
That's
I'm not
awesome.
sure to those judges. Hey, sometimes it might be too creative when I'm up there talking about a trash bag and is the gas chamber really 210 liters? Did you briefly measure his white blood cell count? They looking at me your court like what this boy got going on. Hey, now it pays dividends. We knock some of those DUIs off and the clients appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative. Hope to do it again. Hope to connect with you again. You're a legend out here.
I'm looking forward to it. Now I've got you. The last NCAJ convention. Shame on me for misplacing your contact information, but it's locked in now. So you'll be hearing from me. I'm looking forward to
There
it.
it goes. There it goes.